In speaking of the Roman Catholic Church, the Spanish diplomat Juan Donoso Cortés stated, "The doctrinal intolerance of the Church has saved the world from chaos. Her doctrinal intolerance has placed beyond question political, domestic, social, and religious truths, primitive and holy truths, which are not subject to discussion, because they are the foundation of all discussions. Truths which cannot be called into doubt for a moment without the understanding of that moment oscillating, lost between truth and error, and the clear mirror of human reason becoming soiled and obscured." This view of religion as foundational is very much at the heart of what we might call the explicitly reactionary worldview. "We do not see God, but by him we see all other things," is a notable paraphrase of this idea. Marxist theory has held that capital is the base of all things. At the heart of every matter is the economic concern. By contrast, reactionaries hold that it is instead something much less tangible, that is, the underlying presuppositions about the world which exist without convenient empiric proofs. Many of these are what we might call properly basic beliefs, things such as belief in other conscious agents, in the existence of the physical world, and in the reality of the past. Others, including all that is determined by the great religions of the world, concern origin, meaning, morality, and destiny. For the ardent secularists who have had their way with Europe for the last 200 years or so, sometimes via peaceful methods, other times through brutal oppression and state-sponsored murder, the modern state supposedly leaves these assumptions blank and in doing so gives us the freedom of choice. Each individual is left to make up their own mind about religious questions, and in doing so can waltz into a mosque, a temple, a synagogue, a church, a Monty Python sketch, and enjoy the precious gift of liberty. Or can they? Do we really live in a secular world, or is this a smokescreen? Via his immensely popular blog Unqualified Reservations, Mencius Moldbug put forward the theory that such quaint notions were a convenient myth concocted by a virulent heretical sect he terms ultra-Calvinist, defining his portmanteau thusly: the Calvinist half of this word refers to the historical chain of descent from John Calvin and his religious dictatorship in Geneva, passing through the English Puritans to the New England Unitarians, abolitionists and transcendentalists, progressives and prohibitionists, super-Protestants, hippies and secular theologians, and down to our own dear progressive multiculturalists. The ultra half refers to my perception that, at least compared to other Christian sects, the beliefs of this faith are relatively aggressive and unusual. We can know without doubt that the secular state is mythological if we examine the common sociological functions of religion, namely that they at least attempt to bind people together and more importantly that they provide a legalistic set of expectations upon followers, a common behavioral doctrine complete with harsh criticism for whatever strays into the territory of a moral taboo. Progressivism, which is essentially radical liberalism, and is the virtually uncontested heir to the Enlightenment legacy today, is most certainly used to bring people together. This is how we end up with things like proposition states which are based on ideas rather than races, that is, the USA. Former British Prime Minister David Cameron's demand that schools teach nebulous British values to children is another prime example. And does progressivism have its own moral code which is just as binding upon the population as any Sharia court? Why, of course. Racism, sexism, ableism, homophobia, transphobia, and a whole host of other invented conditions of hate are perfectly analogous to heresies. A common joke among rightists is that the ultimate key to shutting down any debate is to accuse someone of racism. If you examine why this is the case, you find that it is the same reason that accusations of heresy stifled unwanted conversations in medieval Europe. Commit these heresies today, and you are likely to lose your job, be excluded from higher education, be treated with scorn by peers, and in many European countries, can face arrest for hate speech, which by the way is newspeak for blasphemy. Notice, I am not yet stating that this in and of itself is insidious. As I said, this is common to all religions, every single one that has ever existed, and it is foolish to think it can be escaped or indeed that it doesn't actually serve a genuinely good purpose. There are some conversations which should not be had. There are some topics that are too sacred for debate. There is speech which is destructive. The question I bring you is that, with that in mind, is the religious dogma of progress doing these things in pursuit of virtue, or in service to evil. At this point, some perspective is necessary. When one might speak of the conflict between tradition and modernity, between the post-Enlightenment world order, and all that came before that time, in a European context we are speaking of a conflict over the Occidental soul. Stretching back into the mists of history, Occidental man had a varied and vibrant religiosity and set of superstitions that some call pagan, but this isn't a very useful descriptor of Europe's entire pre-Christian religiosity. There is something of a common thread we do see in what might be called indigenous European spiritual practices, and that is a thirst for a very personal connection with the divine element. Legends are full of struggles between gods and men, mythic quests for glory at the behest of supernatural forces, even copulation between the human and the divine. They seem to reject the kind of mitigated dualism that infuses religions such as Islam and even ancient Judaism, where the human and divine agents are separated by a cavernous gulf, and the glory of God minimizes us to practical insignificance. Christianity's importance for Occidental people was the bridging of this gulf in the ultimate story of transformation, as God walked the earth as man, saw things as we see them, felt hunger and thirst as we feel them, and in this sense was more tangible to us than even the mighty yet limited Roman and Germanic deities were. What's more, the original doctrines of Christianity to which the Eastern Orthodox Church still holds tell of a momentous victory at Calvary. Less a story of penitential substitution, the crucifixion was a conquest over Lucifer, a victory over death itself, a kind of grand rescue mission, and all who declared this victory would be saved from the damning authority of the devil and achieve theosis, or ultimate unity, with God, through commune with the Holy Spirit. In time, the entirety of the Occident would come to embrace Christianity as truth. But unfortunately political intrigues and regional disputes led to the schism of the East and West, and eventually in the West, the Protestant Reformation, from which mold-bugs ultra-Calvinism eventually emerged. The Roman ideal and distinct European flair that was synergized with the Christian story was overturned by Martin Luther, and after bouts of bloody holiness purging and a kaleidoscope of new schisms, Christianity itself became exhausted. Into the fray stepped a new challenger to the spiritual legacy of Europe, a heresy quite unlike any other. It is one that would first deny church authority, and by extension monarchical authority, and later on would deny any traditional authority whatsoever, finishing of course with the outright rejection of the Bible in its totality. Thus we arrive at Progressivism, the cult of the supposedly secular. Of course this is a religion devoid of any spirituality whatsoever, and thus is more of a political and social religion than anything else. What is the record of Europe's new religion that Nicolas Gomez de Villa referred to as the religion of Coca-Cola and pornography? After the defeat of its own inbred offspring, Soviet communism and German National Socialism, the occult motivator of progress has become endemic to European life. We are numb to its effects as technological and economic advancement blinds us to social decay, to the collapse of family life, to Orwellian government micromanagement of our lives, and of course most recently to our slow demographic replacement at the hands of supposedly unstoppable mass migration. Part of the reason we don't respond to these viruses in the body politic is because unless they directly affect us, we don't see them as our business. And when they do directly affect us, we find that we are forced to resist them alone. In his essay on the radioactivity of atomic individualism, Thomas Bargest writes our society is filled with the radiation spewed by hundreds of millions of unwise loudmouths, so that each child is pulled in thousands of directions before they can form stable relationships, and then, if they did manage a deep connection despite the odds, they are geographically dispersed to yet more radioactive universities, where they are asked to absorb the voices of generations of disaffected, unstable, unwise, but clever thinkers of the historical left. These unwise loudmouths are the liberated forces of entropic leftward drift, and they have dissolved the communal and fraternal bonds that once existed in Occidental society. While this new religion has its obvious atomizing sentiments such as freedom of choice and individual rights, it also bears the paradoxically atomizing elements of Soviet communism, that being endless conspiracy theories and constant paranoia over who one can trust, what is still acceptable to say in public discourse, and what opinions won't elicit an accusation of heresy from one's neighbor, employer, or even children. Our new religion tells us explicitly that we have no inherent identity, that all human differentiation along any axis is the result of vast networks of hidden oppressors plotting to harm this or that victim group. To be moral people, we must reject these social constructs and allow ourselves to be absorbed into the rest of the world along with our unique histories, cultures, languages, genetics, and psychological profiles. What they won't tell you, of course, is that with progress coming more slowly to other parts of the world, non-Occidental peoples will naturally take advantage of us as the weakest link in a dangerously globalized chain. If there is one thing you take away from this, it is that traditional religions to varying degrees serve to unite a people, bind it, and increase its chances of cohesive survival. Traditional religion is an adaptive trait in societal evolution. Our new religion is its antithesis, serving through a process of rapid and uncontrolled metastasis to atomize society and leave a people defenseless, decadent, weak, and confident in the belief that the highest virtue is their own slow suicide. As I touched upon before, the importance of Christianity for Occidentals is it was the fulfillment of our own innate religious disposition, prophesied even by pre-Christian figures, like Hermes Trismegistus. In it was the potentiality of common understanding between European peoples, sharing in a common moral framework and hope for life beyond death. This potential was never fully realized, and today, at least in Western Europe, it is but a fading echo. Churches lie empty, priests have betrayed all precepts of true mystical knowledge, holy monarchy is a sideshow attraction, and across universities more young people believe in horoscopes and telekinesis than God. What you'll find along with this is that people have no sense of who they are, leading to staggering rates of drug abuse, divorce, depression, and hazardous behavior, in spite of abundant wealth and technology. Modern men are the followers of a new faith which has been killing them for a little over 200 years, even if in the end it is in fact a very different faith which puts the final nail in the coffin of countries like France, Sweden, and the UK. Right now dissolution seems inevitable, that is, unless we get a second chance, or rather seize a second chance for ourselves and reinvigorate the lost greatness that once existed from the Siberian wastes to the Rock of Gibraltar. Finding identity is one thing, but without purpose, it will be void of the action so desperately needed as this dark age drags on and the lights slowly fade and flicker out. The purpose is above us, and whether we turn to it or not will determine if our future is one of terminal inertia, or salvific action on the part of our unique, God-given claim to existence. As it reads in Proverbs, "The sluggard craves and gets nothing, but the desires of the diligent are fully satisfied."